Have you ever read a sentence that was just so beautiful that you had to pause for a moment, sit with it, and remind yourself how to breathe? Because I have all the time. And today I'm going to recommend you some of those books because these are books where the plot is secondary and it's really the writing that makes you want to read them. And whenever spring rolls around, I just gravitate towards more lyrical, poetic writing in general, and I read more literary fiction rather than plot-driven fiction or like fantasy. So this feels like the perfect time to recommend these. And honestly, I think books like this is the reason I always have so much trouble recalling the plot of a book. Like, I know reviewing books is kind of what I do for a job, but it's so hard for me to remember the plot of the books I've read, especially for the books that are more writing-driven, because I will have no recollection of what has happened in a story, but I will always remember how the writing made me feel. And that is also why I underline a lot in my books. Like, if I love the writing in a book, it will look something like this. There will be dog earring, there will be underlined sentences. Here, there's more. I will underline so much because if there's a line that surprises me and really captures a feeling or emotion and puts it into words so perfectly, then that is something I want to remember. And sometimes a single line can inspire me so deeply that I can think of whole new concepts like visual or literary or poetic. Like, a single line can sometimes just make me want to create art myself. And that is the best feeling reading can give you, in my opinion. And I used to read a lot more plot-driven books, especially when I was younger. I just read with the attention of what happens next. But also, ever since I started taking my own writing more seriously, I started engaging with books in such a different way. And now, like, I still sometimes read just for entertainment and like more plot-driven books, but I do feel so much more fulfilled if I end a book and the writing had just completely blown me away and I have a book full of notes and sentences underlined. That is such a great feeling because I know I expanded my mind in a much different way than just entertaining it, if that makes sense. And I sometimes get the question on how to start annotating or how to annotate, and I don't really know how to answer that because I feel like it's such a personal thing to everyone, like what they want to write in a margin. Some people do it more like in a research analysis type of way. Some people treat it more like a diary and they relate their own experiences to what they're reading. But what I do know is that you can learn how to read more deeply and engage with books in a different and more interactive way. And I recently took a Skillshare class on this, which is super helpful because there I realized that reading is really a skill you can train. The more you practice deep reading, the easier it becomes, the easier you notice all the nuances and deeper meanings in a work. So if that's something you would like to learn as well, I can link that specific class in the description below. Some of the key takeaways from that class were mostly for me that it encouraged you to look for lines and paragraphs that evoke a certain emotion within you, whether that's positive or negative. But why do you have a certain feeling about that writing? Like, ask yourself and sit with it for a moment. Like, why am I feeling something about this? And you can take notes on that, whether in the book itself or in like a journal. But really treat a book like you're in conversation with the author. It's not a one-way thing. You are actively changing while you're reading it. And the more you practice that, the easier it becomes. And outside of that class, there are so many other great classes on Skillshare on writing, reading, or any other topic from productivity to development to self-growth. So if you would like to try that, you can scan this QR code or click on the link in my description below. And the first 500 people to do so will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. So definitely don't miss out on that. And thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into the recommendations. The first book I would like to talk about is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This is a fragmented meditation on the color blue, but it's like woven together with themes like heartbreak, personal grief, desire, longing, and philosophy. And it's just one of the most unique formats I have ever read. It's not quite nonfiction, it's not quite fiction, it's not quite poetry. It's somewhere in between. And that's what really made this book stand out for me. And just some of the lines are so stunning. I will put some on the screen so you can read them. I love how this book conveys emotions in an almost distilled way. Like, the further you get on in the book, the emotions and feelings become sharper and more clear. And it really feels like reading someone's personal diary, but in real time. You're like reading someone's thoughts as they form them. That's really how this book feels. It's really just a constellation of thoughts collected, and it's one of the best books that explains heartbreak and grief for me without ever naming it. Using the color blue as a metaphor was just so beautifully done, in my opinion. And if you love experimental and poetic writing, then you definitely have to check this one out. Just in general, Maggie Nelson is a wonderful writer who writes really experimental and different things. So just her as an author, highly recommend. The next one is Lie With Me by Philippe Esson. And this is about a man who looks back and reflects on a intense secret love affair he had with a teenager with another boy. In the small town in the French countryside they grew up in. And even though this one has a bit more of a plot than the previous book, it's still rather emotion driven rather than focused on the actual story. And the most beautiful thing about the writing in this book for me was everything that was not said. There is a lot to read between the lines in this one, and the writing is pretty restrained, like very clipped, very to the point, but almost in a way that you can feel the hidden desire under that restraint, which is like such an important theme in this book. It is really about the violence of repression and repressed desire, which almost makes the really simple writing hurt more in a way. In general, I read a lot of books like this, like older people looking back on tragic love affairs they used to have that failed. And I think there's just something so beautiful how often in those books, the memory of the love affair turns that love into something really sacred, something almost untouchable. Like the unanswered questions are often the most beautiful loves you can have. And I love it when good writing can really convey that feeling. Then we have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And the simplest description of this is that it's a memoir about an abusive relationship between two women. But this book is so much more than this. This has one of the most inventive and unique structures I have ever encountered in any book ever. And I just remember while I was reading this that I was so excited about writing as an art form all over again. It was so new, and it just made me really happy that someone even came up with this, even though the book is devastating, absolutely devastating. But basically, each chapter of this book is a different narrative form and a different genre. So sometimes the story is told through the lens of a fairy tale, sometimes it's a horror, sometimes it's a academic, like scientific analysis. And basically the title of each chapter announces the lens through which she's going to look at whatever happened. So here it says Dream House as Appetite, Dream House as American Gothic, Dream House as set design. So every chapter looks at the story in a really different way. And what this book really left me with was a feeling that the author almost had to reinvent writing or language to be able to talk about what happened to her, because it was so traumatic. She had to like break the form and break through the rules of writing in order to tell this story. And I think also the repetition really strengthened that feeling of how traumatic the abusive relationship was, because there is so much repetition, but it's all through like different shapes. It was really unsettling, honestly. Like this really felt like a haunted house. You're stuck in this haunted house, just a metaphor for the relationship, obviously. And it was claustrophobic in a way, but also that's why it's so well done. I was just mind blown by how something can be both so emotional and beautiful, but also just so intellectual. Like, this is a genius work of art, in my opinion, and everyone should read it. The next book I want to talk about is Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson. This is a modern poetic retelling of the myth of Geryon, and it follows a sensitive young boy as he grows up into adolescence, and he's navigating like identity, love, and heartbreak. And Anne Carson is known for using Greek myths and reshaping them into something new. I think she's a professor of Greek or like a translator, some close relationship she has with Greek myths. And this was heartbreaking. It was very surrealistic and dreamy and strange. And I love how it blends modern life with poetry and myth. Like it's all blended together in such a way that it feels like you're dreaming it, because also in a dream things are so like fragmented and random things show up and you're like, oh, what's that doing there? This book kind of felt the same way, but somehow it worked really well. Nothing is explained. Everything is focused on the emotion, and she explains her emotions through storytelling elements like landscape and color and smell, and everything is really fragmented, which works really well as a metaphor for the vulnerability and confusion of the main character as he grows into himself and all the things he goes through. There are some trigger warnings for this book, just to tell you, for all of them probably, now that I think about it. And again, I was going heavy on the analysis of this one. There was just so much to say and think about, like so many notes. So yeah, this one, it's short, but it will take you a while because there's just so much going on. Next up, we have Dayspring by Anthony Oliveira. Again, gorgeous cover. Full disclosure, I have not fully finished this yet because it's a big boy and it's basically all prose and poetry, so it's not a fast read, but it's a gorgeous one. Like, from what I've read so far, I feel fully confident in recommending this to you as a book with breathtaking writing, because it does have that. This is a lyrical queer reimagining of biblical figures and stories, especially surrounding John the Baptist, if I'm correct, and Jesus, I believe. And it circles themes like desire, devotion, divinity, and it's a blend of like memoir, poetry, prose, lyrical fiction. The language is really lush and devotional and conveys almost something sacred. It really reframes desire not as something sinful, but as something sacred, which I think is really beautifully done. It explores the connection between the body and divinity and longing. The voice of this book is just really intense. Like, every sentence feels like it's charged with meaning. Nothing can be read lightly in this book, which is why it's taking me a while to get through, but it's so gorgeous. Just already the excerpt on the back, it says, "And the word became flesh, coarse hair, crooked smile, the taste of salt on his clavicle. I am the disciple whom he loved." Beautiful, gorgeous, highly recommend. Next up, one that could not miss from this list because I talk about this book all the time, is Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector. This is a stream of consciousness meditation on existence, time, art, and just being, existing in this life. It was really almost a spiritual work for me. I don't know if it was intended that way by Clarice, but for me, this really felt like a spiritual, almost like a spell written down in book form. If you like your books to have some kind of structure, then this one is not for you because there is none to be found, but it also makes it so good in my opinion. It's almost like you're trying to hold water in your hands, but it's just falling through your fingers, and that's the point. You cannot grasp anything in this book, you just have to experience it. You just have to read it and let yourself be taken on the flow of the words and give yourself over to it. That's the best way I can describe how to engage with this book. And I know that's sort of counteractive to what I've said before, where you want to, you know, take your time, sit with some sentences, try to analyze them. Like, you can do that, but I would do it on the second read of this. The first read, I would just blast through it and let yourself experience it. This book really wants you to resist understanding. It's pure sensation. It's also a very sensory experience, I would say. It's just very intimate because it feels like someone is speaking directly to you from like their deepest subconsciousness. Like, it feels like you're reading the words of someone who never meant to make them public, even though that's not the case, but it feels like that. Like, solely with this tiny little book, Clarice Lispector made herself one of my favorite writers of all time. Then lastly, we have Northwoods by Danielle Mason. I've also mentioned this one multiple times on this channel. Like, I just cannot stop talking about the books that I love. I refuse to. Everyone has to know about them. So if you're not aware yet, this book talks about a house in the woods, and it follows it throughout centuries, and the stories are told through its inhabitants who live there and the changing landscape around the house. This one is definitely more narrative than some of the other books, like there's an actual plot that you can follow, but it's still quite fragmented because you follow all these different people throughout different periods in time. But the writing is just really what makes it stand out. Like, this evoked such feelings of awe and wonder and surprise within me in a way that I find really hard to put into words. It's almost like you're seeing time unfold. Like, do you know those clips that sometimes movies or videos have where it's a time lapse of just one place and you see like the sky and the trees and everything shift around it because it's sped up. That's sort of how this book felt, but in slow motion. It just really shows that life goes on regardless of things dying. Makes visual the cycle of rot and decay and growth and continuity. The cycle of life, basically, but in a more like uncanny, unsettling way. It positions nature against human life and shows how we think we are very significant in our lives and that the changes we make are really impactful, but in the long run, we're really insignificant and it really doesn't mean so much and nature will always prevail. And I really loved the themes of rot and decay. I don't know what it is within me, but I love a good visual of rot and decay. It gets me every time. I think this book could have done with a better cover. I'm not a big fan of this. It doesn't really convey the feelings this book gave me, but it is one of my favorite books of all time. So those are all the books I wanted to talk about today. I feel like I went through them quite quickly. I tried to be more concise and to the point this time because I always yap too much. So let me know if that was better for you or not. And let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any recommendations based on these, because I'm always open to more books with gorgeous writing. And don't forget to check out the 1 month free trial of Skillshare. Again, it's in my description below, or you can use this QR codes. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye!